All right, today we're jumping into the world of historical detectives, and we're tackling a puzzle where the stakes could not be higher.
So, that's the big question, right? How do you spot a lie from that long ago? For a very special group of historical detectives, this was their entire mission. They were tasked with protecting the actual words of the Prophet Muhammad from, well, fakes and forgeries. And believe me, this wasn't just some dusty old academic exercise. No, this was about protecting the very heart of an entire religious tradition. So, how on earth did they pull it off?
Okay, so the official term for one of these forgeries is maldo. Basically, it's any report that someone just made up and then try to pass off as something the prophet said. The lie could be in the words themselves, the actual text, or it could be in the list of people who supposedly passed it down. To fight this, early Islamic scholars had to become experts in verification. They literally created a science of authentication.
So, what was the first tool in their detective kit? Well, it wasn't a magnifying glass or a fancy machine. It was something way more subtle. A kind of sixth sense. Think of it as a deep, fine-tuned intuition that came from years and years of intense study. Scholars called it malakah, basically a special knack for this kind of work.
And this quote from the early scholar al-Rabi ibn Khuthaym just nails it. He said, "A real hadith has a light, like daylight. You just recognize it. But a forgery, it's got a darkness, like the dead of night, and you just know to reject it." For someone who lived and breathed the Prophet's real teachings, it was that obvious. One just felt right, and the other felt totally wrong.
And it gets even more intense. The great scholar Ibn al-Jawzi talked about it like it was a physical reaction. Not just your brain saying, that doesn't sound right. No, he said it was a shudder, a gut feeling. Your heart itself is just repulsed by it. Imagine that. It's like your body is an authenticity detector.
To bring this idea down to earth, Imam al-Bulqini came up with this amazing analogy. He said, look, think about a loyal servant. This servant knows their master perfectly, what they like, what they hate, how they talk. So if some random stranger shows up and says, "Oh, your master said this totally bizarre thing," the servant would immediately call them out. It's a fraud, right? Al-Bulqini's point was that the scholars had that exact same kind of deep personal knowledge of the Prophet.
But here's the thing. This sixth sense was only step one. It was the starting point, not the whole story. That intuition had to be backed up by cold, hard facts. And that's where the real scientific investigation began, by checking out the chain of narrators, what's known as the isnād.
So they basically created a forensic checklist. For every single person in that chain, they asked some really tough questions. Like, first off, could these two people have even met? Does the timeline add up? Second, did the forger ever confess? You'd be surprised. Third, what's this narrator's reputation? Is he known for, making things up? And finally, if this story is so important, why haven't we heard it from anyone else?
And their number one weapon in all of this? History. Plain and simple. I love how the scholar Sufyan al-Thawri put it. He said, "When the narrators started using lies, we started using history against them." Boom. Because, honestly, the easiest way to bust a forgery was just to check the dates.
Okay, check out this classic case. You've got this guy Umar ibn Musa who shows up in the city of Homs. He starts telling all these amazing stories that he claims he heard directly from a famous local scholar named Khalid ibn Madin. People started asking questions, and he says, "Oh yeah, I met him back in the year 108. Just one tiny problem. A quick check of the public records showed that Khalid had actually died 4 years before that, in the year 104. Whoops, case closed. And get this, sometimes the forgers actually confessed. There's this one truly wild case of a guy who admitted he just flat out invented a bunch of sayings about how great it is to read certain parts of the Quran. But here's the twist. His motive wasn't evil. He said he did it for the sake of God. He just wanted to get people excited about Scripture. It just goes to show, even a lie told with good intentions is still a lie, and these scholars knew it had to be called out.
You have to understand, a person's reputation was absolutely everything. Imam Shafi'i made this great comparison. He said scholars were like money changers, the experts who can spot a counterfeit bill from a mile away. It's their job to call out the fakes to protect the whole system. So if a scholar knew someone was a known liar, they had a duty to say so. And they didn't just gossip about it. They created these huge biographical dictionaries, basically massive databases tracking the trustworthiness of thousands of people.
All right, so once they've thoroughly investigated the messengers in the chain, it was time for the final step, analyzing the message itself. This is called examining the matn.
And this is where that art expert skill comes back in. You know how an expert can look at a painting and just know it's a fake because the brushwork is all wrong? Well, it was the same for these scholars. The Prophet's way of speaking was famous. It was eloquent, it was powerful, every word counted. Forgeries, on the other hand, they just sounded clumsy. The wording was awkward, the ideas were weird, or they just sounded so blah, so ordinary. They were missing that special light of prophecy that the experts could always see.
Take a look at this example. 4 things are never satiated by 4 things: a female by a male, the earth by rain, the eye by looking, and the ear by news. I mean, to a trained ear, this was an immediate red flag. The phrasing is clunky, the idea is kind of shallow. When you put that up against the powerful, profound way the Prophet was known to speak, it just sounds wrong. It's clearly the work of someone who just wasn't a very good writer.
So when you step back and look at all of this together, the intuition, the history, the textual analysis, what you see is something incredible. It's this amazing intellectual legacy, a complete, comprehensive system designed for one thing: finding the truth.
This was their complete toolkit, and what's so brilliant is how it combines the art, that deep, gut-level intuition, with the science of hard evidence. They checked the dates, they vetted the narrator's reputation, and they analyzed the style of the text itself. It was a full-blown, multi-layered defense system against lies.
And that really brings us to a final, pretty big thought. I mean, we live in an age of fake news, deep fakes, and just a flood of misinformation online, right? Suddenly, this 1,400-year-old system feels incredibly relevant. It's a powerful reminder that finding the truth isn't easy. It takes critical thinking, for sure, but it also takes really, really knowing your sources. So the question for us is, what can we learn from these ancient detectives for our own search for truth today? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.